Hey guys, we are here to talk about tips for ultralight backpack hunting and hiking. This is actually one of the things that I actually really enjoy kind of digging into. Frankly, I'm learning more and more all the time. And I'll actually point you guys in a direction. One of the best podcasts that I know out there is Aaron Snyder's podcast. Aaron owns Kafaru Packs. I really think his podcast is a great resource for backpack hunting and also hiking for that matter. So when it gets into the ultralight backpacking, it's always a question about gear. What gear do you take? What gear do you leave home? What level of comfort do you need in the field? How far are you going? How many days are you going? What altitude? What's the weather going to be like? There's so many factors that play into a lightweight backpack or a lightweight, hunting expedition where you're trying to keep as much weight off as possible so you can go deeper into the woods. So the very first thing I think you need to think about, obviously, is weather and how many days are you going out. What I would say in the beginning here as a tip is I would start with maybe a night out or 2 nights out tops and start to test your gear, start to test your own physical fitness, your navigation, things like that. And then you can start to kind of pare your gear list down from there. Maybe there's some things you forgot, some things you just decide you don't need. If you're out for 3 days and you don't use something, outside of a medical kit, you probably don't need it on a longer hunt. To me, the very first thing that you need to think about when you're going on a lightweight backpacking trip is water. You have to stay hydrated. So is there a water source where you're going? Are you going to pack water? How much water do you need? Things like that. Or can you take some purifying tablets or a filter and get water out in the field? So you got to really study your terrain, understand the time of year, and look at that. The next thing is light. You got to have light at night to be able to navigate. Again, another tip is navigation. Making sure you have a GPS. I generally like to have 2 forms of navigation at the very least. I have Onyx Maps on my phone. But I also carry an extra GPS in my pack. It's not a bad idea at all to have a paper map when all else fails and a compass. So that's navigation is a very critical part of lightweight backpacking. But again, you're trying to save weight. So as we look at our gear items, we have to decide what we're going to throw out. But I definitely wouldn't throw out things that have to do with staying hydrated and keeping yourself from getting lost. Sleep system. Thinking about how you're going to sleep at night. How heavy is your sleeping bag going to be? Or do you even need a sleeping bag? Can you just take a lightweight tarp and use the clothes that are on you to stay warm at night, depending on the time of year? When it comes to hunting, also, we have to think about our pack. How many days are we going? There again, I talked about like Kafaru packs. Those are very heavy duty, not heavy, but actually strong lightweight packs that actually pack a lot of load, and they pack them comfortably so you're not wearing sores in your body. It's not bad on your back. Your neck's not getting sore. The longer you can be comfortable, the longer you can stay out in the field. So don't just go buy a pack at Walmart. You got to be able to carry a lot of weight, especially if you're doing an 8 or 10 days. You might have 60, 80 pounds on your back, not including what you might be trying to pack out if you actually shoot an animal deep in the woods. Another thing that you got to be able to think about is fire. Do you need a fire? Is it the time of year where you're going to need to worry about a fire at all? If it's cold, if it's getting cold at night, there's any chance of you getting wet, needing to dry out gear, kind of try to keep the hypothermia back. If you sweat a lot and you need a way to dry out, you got to have fire making ability. And there again, I would have redundancy in your fire making. A lighter is great, but maybe like a ferro rod, a bow drill setup and stuff like that. It's a cool skill to have. I think there's definitely better and more efficient ways for weight than like a bow drill. Another thing to think about is, are you going as a group? And this is a really great way to kind of break out some items amongst the group and not necessarily repeat items that you guys don't need to be carrying. So for example, if you're going with a buddy and he's your hunting partner, maybe he has a jet boil and you can use his jet boil to do all the cooking. Or maybe you pack the tent and you take a 2-man tent or a 3-man tent. He doesn't need to bring a tent. So go through your items and really think about a good hunting partner that you could go with that can carry his fair share of the load. Combine your gear lists together, but also make sure that that person has good quality gear. You don't want a guy to say, oh, I'm gonna bring a stove, and then he shows up with something that doesn't start when it's cold out, or doesn't work when it's windy, or maybe his fire starter stuff gets wet and he doesn't have it packed correctly. So working as a group, working as a team can save you both a lot of weight as a whole. Another thing to think about in regards to weather is rain gear. And there again, time of year. It's very important that you have good rain gear, especially if you think there's any chance it's going to be raining or snowing. If you can keep yourself dry, you can generally keep yourself warm. And for your body to fight off being wet and to try and warm itself, it's expending calories, and that's energy. Calories equal energy. So there again, with the energy thing, you have to think about food. What kind of food can you take on that trip that gives you the most energy possible? You might need some carbohydrates, some sugar, something like that to keep your system fired up. But it's also good to have some protein in your pack as well. So thinking about food is a very important part of this. Thinking about the area you're going into in regards to food is bears. So how are you going to deal with mitigating that risk with bear country? Like I grew up on the edge of the Bob Marshall Wilderness. If you're going to take food in, you're going to be packing food, having those in sealed bags, sealed containers, trying to keep scent down, but then also maybe hanging your pack up in a tree away from camp, away from where you're sleeping at night, getting it high off the ground, and maybe quite a ways from your camp to mitigate that risk of bears coming into camp. If you're gonna hang your food, you need a way to hang it. So like rope, paracord, that's a really good thing to think about taking in with you so you can actually hang your food up out of the way of bears. You can also use that paracord to guy out a tent, to fix a bootlace, do all kinds of different things that you need to do with rope. Obviously, another important part is a knife. To be able to take a knife, to be able to cut things, to be able to rescue yourself in a bad situation, to be able to cut up food, potentially shave bark off of a tree to start a fire, chop some small kindling, things like that. A knife comes in handy in any number of tasks that you might need in the backcountry, including self-defense, quite frankly. So you might even think about, do I carry potentially two knives? One larger knife for chopping up kindling and doing stuff like that, and then a small knife just to have on your person. I've got one right here on me all the time to be able to carry and use just for the little tasks that you need to have a knife handy. Another thing to think about is versatility. So when you have that paracord, there's a lot of different things you can use it for. Also, if you put, say like a garbage sack in your bag, you can use it for garbage, for stuff like that. You can also use it to cut holes in and throw on as a piece of rain gear that you might, if you didn't maybe bring rain gear and you didn't anticipate the weather changing. In Montana, the weather can change really fast. Maybe it's summer, maybe you don't think you need rain gear, but you find yourself in an afternoon thunderstorm. You can also use that as a ground mat to lay down, to sleep on, just to keep that temperature in your body just a tiny bit, and also keep moisture from the ground for the condensation soaking up through your clothing. There's a lot of different things like that. You can even put that garbage sack on, throw a puffy jack over it, and get your body, heart rate up to actually try to build heat and keep heat up close to your skin if you get in a really cold situation. So versatility of gear is important. Another important tip is communication. So communicate with your family before you leave, or your friends, where you're going, how long you're going to be out, what trail you're on, maybe even if you know where your camps are going to be. Because if you become lost or you have a problem, then they'll have a better chance of starting to find you in an area that you said you're going into. So leaving a map and leaving some communication at home is very important. But once in your field, how do you communicate? How are you going to communicate with your friends in your group? You can take radios. If you're hunting in Montana, you can't use electronic communications like a radio. In some states you can. But if you're just on a hike in July in Glacier Park or in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, take a couple radios, make sure your whole group is on the same channels. If someone gets separated, you can find someone, or maybe you can radio someone that's not in your party. Thinking about an inReach. An inReach is a critical piece of gear. It's a gear that I'll just never go hunting without at this point. You just never know, and with an inReach, you can hit one button. It's an SOS. It sends a search and rescue team a message, and they will send a life flight in or a team in to find you. Every year in Montana, you hear about people saving themselves with an inReach. So test those communications. Make sure you know how to use your GPS. Make sure you know how to use your inReach. Make sure it pairs to your phone, or you have a way to make sure that works. And lastly, batteries. You have to have batteries to run all this stuff, and you kind of have to analyze your battery usage while you're out there. And there again with weight, you know, if you take a solar charger, it's going to add more weight. Might be a very good piece of equipment to take, or when you're out in the field, you just reduce the use of your phone, your maps, and your inReach until you actually really need it, and you save that battery life. Cold weather will kill your batteries, so think about maybe even carrying your cell phone, that's your navigation piece, up against your body, or your inReach up against your body. You can actually use your body temperature to help keep that stuff warm, to save your battery life. Ultimately, what you need to do is pack your gear in a way that you think packs the most efficiently. It's secure in your pack. It's as light as possible, but then go test that gear. Go on dry runs. Go hike a quick hill for an hour, come back down, see how your pack rides on your hips, maybe on your shoulders. Test out your gear. Go out and start a fire when it's raining. Go out and start a fire when it's windy. Maybe just go out behind your house or down to a state park or somewhere where you can go in the national forest and forage for a little bit of bark and some wood and practice making a fire. You can do that stuff after work in an evening just to practice your skills, to be more prepared out in the woods. The lightweight packing, you got to remember, you're not going to be as comfortable as you are when you're home. If you're going to try and keep the level of comfort that you have at home in the field, you're going to reduce the amount of days you can be out in the field. And let's face it, the more days you can be in the field, the better chance you have of finding that animal, finding that view, getting to that mountaintop that you've never been to, things like that. So it's really important to consider need versus want. And lastly, what I will say is a survival medical kit is absolutely critical. The medical part, it's not just about saving your own life, it's about saving your buddies. So if he cuts himself, if you have a tourniquet, it's absolutely critical. What I will say about a medical kit is make sure your friend has one. Make sure your hunting partner has one. If he doesn't, buy him one and make sure he has it, because it could be him saving your life with a medical kit that you gave to him. So a tourniquet, a chest seal, a nasal pharyngeal, things like that are very, very important to have in your pack for your safety and for the longevity of being able to go in the field and stay safe. So those are some lightweight backpacking tips. Again, seek out some podcasts like Aaron Snyder's. Seek out your own information. Test out gear. Weigh your gear. But never sacrifice your personal safety for weight. You can go lose 2 or 3 pounds by running on a treadmill in a week, and 2 or 3 pounds of gear in your pack can actually be very, very critical. So the last piece of that is that physical fitness piece. Get yourself in shape, lose some weight, trade that weight with life-saving gear in your pack, and always stay safe out in the field.